CGQM Beachox 5522, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. We will have a conversation, quite simple, quite clear, 15/12/2021. It's an accountability. This is an independent effort, an academic effort. As you can observe here, we will observe that uh, this is an academic effort, international procedure considering the effort made, named Suncoast Project, Phase 1. We will review, check patterns, observe if exist. We will get a dive inside the business, considering creation, development, and results by free will. And then we will bring evidences, all proven, and have the conclusion of our charge as industrial crime from private violation, Yuri Novidekuria. It means the judge knows the rule. The judge will bring the facts and judge will present your right. We will bring as first fact, for instance, if I come inside an area, I'm arriving in an area and had a departure in a space with problems, institutional problems, and coalition scams involving essential needs, essential services, essential public service. Of course, that we have a fusification here. We have a book at there that is the about marketing. Philip Kotler, marketers are there to segment the market and avoid this fusification because sometimes when you are fused and doing things around, you can hurt others' interests, others, purpose as statement on the institution or even construction, and then you will hide yourself inside this cluster, fusified as an institution that do things by itself. If you set a parallel line to collect the information as cyber threat, you are a menace. You are doing something illegal against the law. You will have the connection by remote modification at the instrument and gadgets, and when you got that area, you will be connected, for instance, by your mobile. And then if you do things on your social network, and when you change, for instance, the mobile access code at the digital space, we will check that this will be under an interval inside the communication set to collect this data. And we will observe that sometimes this allowed to have simulation of you, especially when you can clone a cell phone or a machine. And this is something that we could have on mind. But why you do this? You can do this, or you can do this because you are doing an institutional abuse. And then we check that the new trace as flow and reverse. So flow, consider you can have it. And indeed you had the international investigation about my life, about my things, and did everything by law. And then we can bring sometimes arguments to understand why you have to do this. And was suggested in a very first contact to have this and get in touch with things I do and check my personality. Don't trust me, observe the facts, observe the situation. And if you're having a flow and reversal flow, if we had a kickoff as a procedure inside an academic effort, independent, because, for instance, I do not consider one specific alpha something like this or one specific reading, and I can have the course, or have the conclusion of the course. Or even if I do not like politics, I'm an idiot in the same way, and I must be separated from the brilliant heads that will pay this charge and have the prison 6 up to 20 on America. We had this new tracer. When I have the accountability, maybe I will keep the same pattern as observed. This was my first academic paper, which was about laundering money. and it's a case solved with a conviction, and I lost points, I think, because I said that the conviction in crimes like this is something okay, and it's not my creation, it was a result, this affect the conviction, but I lost points. Both, love both. And then we will observe that sometimes when we act by institutional abuses, we can commit, you know, industrial crime and have the association by do not having the internal control as proper, by the lack of capacity, which is a consequence of lack of will, especially with scams at nepotism and corruption. Supporting corruption by replace variables under this benefit as nepotism, and then you will continue the abuse as violation, sometimes committing a violation of privacy. But if you are doing a research and a serious thing inside, you violate the interest on it, can be espionage. When you collect the data by the interval to set the perception about the reality of this research, maybe you had committed this situation here named sabotage. And of course, that the new tracer as flow and reversal flow will allow us to understand how serious is this thing and how bad is your misconduct. The subsidiary criminal arguments by payments as modified data inside the criminal record go by specific institution with use, by specific signature, considering the deputy as police department and all crew that make the registry, the prosecutor that have this used and beefed up by proofs invented and encouraged this, and the judge, unfortunately, are corrupted. And we had proved the integrated failure. This comes from Brazil as a conjunctural failure. Observe that the board, if you take a look, please, frequency 55, frequency 5521, frequency 5522, and all national space, which give us the perception as a structural gap on investment saving curve and macroeconomics, results and data and records, and the transfer bubbles for the international financial system and have a reversal and wrong perception about the financial relation, which is about debt and credit, must be equal, which is the same relation as supply and demand on microeconomy, and the same relation on macroeconomy as investment saving and liquidity money cure. This will be projected in the international area in the way you are doing, affecting the balance of payments and impacting the global economy. We are proving this to the central bank. Why? We need and we had and we offered the database signal because we didn't have this from central bank. We had specific heads and chair, and now, I mean, the World Bank, which has the IMF on it and the silence of all central banks around. I'm an individual doing academic research as independent effort. And we had, let's suppose, this integration from this area, Brazil, that is under economic and financial control as a consequence of coalition scam public and corporate threatening the citizens. And sometimes the private room and private space of one citizen do a research and then you impact the interest on it. And by this, you committed industrial crime one more time. And we have 197 nations, the distortion as a circle inside the square, projected as a estimative, will have, the systemic failure that will go around the globe. And we have the schedule as distortion oriented by failure in Brazil. We will have this, the systemic failure as subsidiary registry. We've had a big cluster of information clouded as big data, but big data as criminal record duplicity as perception of the reality will put any kind of decision and a mistake. This is the idea of swap scams. Have public finance crime, but get social benefit as extortion in Brazil and all around the globe and in the health system in the same way, considering they provide anything, all treasure associated Treasury Department as public associated with central banks equally, and having the trend as driving the negative one by the economical record that this period, this is a global trend and a global menace, must be faced and treated like this. We used the idea as cross-cut between the area 5521, 5522 by the Fibonacci pattern, consider the fractal pattern as a structural organization. A single individual will have the same behavior as behaviorism, as a structure, as a microsystem, as an entire system, or the entire global system. On present time, you are, shaking on your boots and feeling yourself under pressure. Indeed, you are in hot water, and when you consider, for instance, make a call to your peers to ask help or to say that you are in hot water, we had overtook the bank scenes, and this idea is, of course, a monitoring procedure that allowed us to have something quite simple to understand, which is, let's suppose that I have my area as three different areas. I have the City 1, the City 2, and the City 3. The City 1 is kind of the surf city, let's suppose. People like to do things in a calm way. I will call it City 1. The City 2, people like to fly high at the sky or do things like this. And the City 3 is the most fancy things that like kind of sophisticated things. People here is kind of have a simple life. People here have the ambition to do a lot of things, and people here kind of have that sophisticated life. We have a city before. Let's suppose that is one very specific city here. Name it a city A. And we have a city here, a space here, name it B. And we have a city here, name it C. Let's suppose if we have the city and we have interest on it, we will have, for instance, the interest red here, the interest blue here, and here we will have an interest which can be red or blue, because indeed we have only two interests. If you are not red, if you are not blue, you are a value negative one. And then we have the trend to this area as negative one, consider distortion on this area, on this area, on this area. If this is a criminal thing, I would say, I have the criminal group A, so let's suppose to have a city, Jaconais. Then we have another city, Vila Três, something like this. And we have a situation here that if you are not A, if you are not B, you are trending to this area as negative one. Here is the city one with the mayor, the local justice, everybody. They can't be linked with the criminal scams, but sometimes they do. In the same way here, in the same way here, especially when they got retired. And let's suppose that we have this association and this entire city here got dominated by the criminal group A, this got dominated by criminal group B, and here we have an area which can be to extend the gains of one of these two both, and then but they are not interested, but we are having things here, movement there. It points to something curious. And this area here has got under pressure by the institutional failure, which indeed is the association. In the same way, this area here. And they made calls here as, a retired people or an officer that has a son inside as the local mayor or the local governor, and they got caught by this interconnection. And in the same way here, and here we have the association as interest, and all with the interest as coalition forming the entire trend as negative one under economic and financial control that can be evidenced by payrolls. This was instrument on the very ancient time, I'd say, on IBM and others, that gives the idea as payments made inside the company. And if you have an overpayment, of course, that you will have the object as the operation third win units. We said that maybe we will have this model here with interest in a very first moment, considering interconnection by the AT&T, the machine, or even the Unisys, the IBM, the big tech, and you set your scam to do this and collect data of people that came to this area to spend the weekend or the vacation or do things, and they suffered financial frauds, and you had a scam as digital payments on it. All this can be audited, and as you can observe, every time we have an interconnection with areas under the criminal domain, we have a criminal organization or a structure evidenced and proved, especially by the financial transference. One of the objects that of my very first research was this, the laundry scam. Then we will have now the result as itself, which is the when you have the interconnection of this is looking as a workflow, but indeed will go by the domain of circumstance and the hierarchical distribution of power and illicit power or illegal influence, something like this. But if it has a trend oriented by money and financial gain, we have transnational organized crime. In Brazil, lot 12,850. This is a Ponzi scam from public budget, considering the transference that you do. The coalition scam as corporate SAFs, as item SAFs, which is inside your investment saving group, regression to the supply and the demand by people under vulnerability receiving stimulus from public governments or for public treasury. And then they will pay and have their needs satisfied by, the supply offered by coalitions linked with the public treasury that now is having the public money. And this is a Ponzi scam. It's an international crime, and you act by abuse. If you are under or inside the antitrust justice, you have another crime considering all violations evidence and proved, as you can observe, and we had this that we will support the antitrust justice. And you committed industrial crime in the same way, and now we are evidencing this trust scam as a big risk. You will be unable to offer your reason by law because it's a legal scam. In the same way, the connection, the violation, and in the interval for not authorized and least collect of data to support criminal groups in the way we could have observed, audited, evidenced, and proved. This is a self-defense model, Juris Novitcuria. We are claiming one more time the criminal conviction after the Christmas, but you can have the dismiss right now because this kind of failure integrated in the way you have as a conjunctural trend, as observed in the board, only happen by criminals inside the institution. You must cut them out, fire them, put them out. And this dismissing procedure is the control group that you need on the board to have that circuit as research, considering the database sigma, which is this all information presented and justified to the World Bank why we must have this and need this, because your big data it had a lack of will in the way we have on present time. I'm not a member of the World Bank. I'm independent people doing this, presenting these arguments. The chart to have the machine learn and the conviction positive one crossed with negative one, you are guilty. You can offer the 00 positive one. 00 negative one is a criminal that turns as a informer or the infiltrated agent then can bring the positive one interval negative one or the 00 internal value negative one. You finish here, he committed violation of privacy, got charged by this causality and the continuity of your behavior bring us to the industrial crime, and then the industry will have the interest at protection of my basic rights and guarantees, charging you. The estimative value is 33 trillion, will be used as an anti-crime budget with a conditional flow 1% at first 3 trillion. I can have the transference, for instance, to a person. Let's suppose a big head in USA to become a such investor group, positive one in about positive one, research one global company, no contracts on it and have the continuity of this audit, this effort. And then we'll check if the trend at or that the board will be negative one. You can present who is leading this trend and try to save your ass or he will be sent to jail as international criminal by guaranteeing Brazil international bail. In America, if you got this as an offensive behavior, for instance, against the American Constitution and as premise, which is the stability and the free will in Brazil, inside the security for and you are an authority, a minister, maybe you can face consequence in America. And sometimes they have death penalty or, you know, prison for her life, and other things. This is the idea, the transparency that you have, the accountability that you need, and wish you success that you deserve. But you must, have the declaration in the way you claim. Have a nice week. Yeah.